Since we live in a time when it looks like travel is getting heavily blocked, I feel like talking a little something about the Green Book, mainly to highlight just how important traveling is, particularly for Black folks. I'm also feeling this topic heavily because this time last year, I did my first ever puppet show at the Center for Puppetry Arts based on the children's book, Ruth and the Green Book. It was such a cute show, a great way to be immersed in Black history, and the cast was phenomenal to work with. Now you may be looking at me and asking me, Judah, what is the Green Book and why is this so important now? The Negro Motorist Green Book was written and named after postman Victor Hugo Green as a method to help Black people travel safely and avoid trouble or danger in the Jim Crow South and Midwest. Segregation made traveling for Black folks extremely difficult given that there were very few hotels, restaurants, or establishments that would serve them. Not to mention Black people faced all kinds of violence while traveling, whether it was getting pulled over for no reason, getting attacked, or having their vehicles destroyed by hate mobs, or, being turned into strange fruit on a southern tree, if you know what I mean. Anyways, experiencing similar problems when it came to anti-Semitism, Jews got together and made their own travel guide called the Jewish Vacation Guide. In addition to this book, there also existed two smaller travel publications for Black people at that time. And all this gave Victor Hugo Green the inspiration he needed to create his own travel guide for Black Americans. The very first edition of the Green Book was published in 1936, although I could only find the copy from 1937. Originally, it was only distributed by mail and only included Black-owned locations in New York. However, there was still an option to list the names and addresses of other Black families that needed the Green Book. You would simply write their information on the back page, mail it back to Mr. Green, and those families would also receive free copies. But eventually, the Green Book started getting sold for 75 cents at newsstands and at Esso Standard Oil, one of the largest and most integrated companies during that time. Over the years, the Green Book grew in popularity, particularly during the Great Migration and post-World War II, when more Black people traveled north and gained more access to owning houses, cars, businesses, and even a little bit of their own wealth. The book became international and expanded to list addresses in the US, Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and even various locations in Europe and Africa. Special editions were even released to include safe modes of public transportation for Black people via train, bus, ship, or airline. And the variety of places that Black people could venture to exploded. I'm talking restaurants, hotels, businesses, churches, theaters, gas stations, salons, bars, recreational activities, resorts, schools, and HBCUs, civil rights organizations. You name it, it was in that book. There were safety tips, articles, and famous quotes that could also be found in its pages. One of them strutted the front cover of the 1949 edition, Travel is Fatal to Prejudice by Mark Twain. Even celebrities like Aretha Franklin and Don Shirley used the book while traveling on concert tours in the South. The Green Book's rise to fame was also thanks to the countless women such as Mr. Green's wife and head of production, Alma D. Green, who contributed to the success of the Green Book. Many of these women were writers, editors, and publishers of the book. And due to the fact that World War II caused women to have to go into the workforce, a large portion of the featured businesses in the Green Book were owned by Black women. With the rise in both access to society as well as the pride and dignity among Black people, the title changed from the Negro Motorist Green Book to the Negro Traveler's Green Book to just the Traveler's Green Book. The Green Book sold over 15,000 copies per year, grew its amount of locations by 8 times its original amount, and had at least 21 total publications between 1936 and 1967. The only years the Green Book wasn't published was during World War II and 1965, the year of the Civil Rights Act. Victor Green had hoped that one day the Green Book would no longer be needed and Black people would finally be free to travel wherever they please. And in 1964 and 1965, though he had already passed away, his dream came true. The Civil and Voting Rights Acts finally prohibited segregation in businesses and establishments across the country. This meant that after its final publication in 1967, Black people would no longer need to use the book while on the road. Despite this victory, it came at a cost. Most of the Black-owned establishments went out of business since everyone flocked toward the white establishments they were once banned from. Neighborhoods that were once flooded with Green Book locations either became impoverished or gentrified. Now, fortunately, over the years, many organizations like the Smithsonian Institution and the NPS Route 66 Preservation Program have made efforts to preserve the Green Book's history. Vintage copies of the Green Book are still purchasable today for you to witness up close and personal. And media like the Green Book movie and the children's book Ruth and the Green Book by Calvin Alexander Ramsey share stories of the day in the life of Black travelers on the road during the prime of the Green Book's publication. And as mentioned before, the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta adapted the children's book into a puppet show that showcased in 2012 and 2024. I got a copy of the children's book as a souvenir, and let's just say I have an emotional attachment to this book and the puppet show. And even though we don't have our own version of the Green Book today, there are around 2 million Black-owned businesses in America today, something that Mr. Green would definitely be proud of if he were still here. Probably the main things that will be remembered about the Green Book was that it was a symbol both of the community and solidarity among Black Americans during a time of rampant hatred and of the effort to achieve their own version of the so-called American dream. It gave Black people access to the world and encouraged them to achieve Black excellence. And in an era where we are yet again facing issues of censorship, suppression of rights, and limited access to travel, I say it's time we adopt this attitude once again. So I say all of this to encourage you to please get your passports and help other people get their passports if you can, and travel to your heart's content. Because the era of the Green Book was not that far away historically. Our parents and grandparents, quite frankly, relied on the value of travel. And if you want to keep learning about the Green Book, visit my Instagram page and go to the Green Book Highlight, where I share even more details about its history and legacy. I also encourage you to go to the TikTok shop and explore these 3 products that you see here on your screen, particularly Driving the Green Book, sold by HarperCollins and written by Alvin Hall, which explores the history and legacy of the Green Book even further. Thanks for watching, everybody. Get your passports ASAP, and I'll see you again soon.